So we'll wait just a couple more minutes, just in case we have more. Okay, well, maybe we'll get started, and if others come in, then they can catch up. The session's being recorded as well, so they can always watch later. We're a little group. There's two of you. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Natalia. This might seem overly formal for such a small group, but welcome. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more. Oh, that's so funny. There's the rest of your thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the arm concentration specifically. I have slides. I could talk forever as well, but feel free to just jump in, especially since there's just a few of us. You can use the raise hand function that's at the bottom next to the picture of the camera. There's a person with their hand raised. If you click on that, then I just know I can call on you to unmute so we're not talking at the same time, or you can also type something into the chat, any kinds of questions, and feel free really to derail me and make this useful for you, especially because there's just a few of us. So yeah, feel free to make the session what you need it to be to get the information that you need. What I have planned is to do some quick intros, talk about the concentration as an overview, talk about the kinds of careers that people work in leaving the concentration. Then I want to look more closely at the courses. What are the required courses in the ARM concentration, and what are some of the electives that you can take? Then some more information about getting involved, and we're really lucky to have one of the students in the ARM concentration here with us who can introduce herself in a minute, to also help talk to you about what student life is like and the kinds of initiatives that students are engaged in. As I think it was Dean Duff that talked about our students, they really are in many ways the life of the faculty, and they make a lot of things happen. Create a lot of engagement opportunities for one another. So that's a really important part of our faculty. And then there will be time for questions at the end if there's anything lingering. But as I said, just feel free, please, to interrupt me and ask questions throughout as well. So my name is Karen Sertam. I'm the ARM concentration liaison this year. I graduated from the program actually with a master's, then it was called a Master's of Information Studies in 2008. Before that, I had an MA in English Literature, and then a Bachelor of Humanities many years ago. But after I graduated with my master's from this program, I worked as a professional archivist and a records manager as well, mostly in academic institutions. And a good chunk of my career was working as a private records archivist at the University of Toronto Archives, where I did a lot of things, but one of the things I did was work with prominent faculty members to acquire their papers, their research material, correspondence, publications, photographs, journals, all of that material, and to keep it into the archives, arrange and describe and make it available. But I did a lot of other things, and I'm happy to talk about the kinds of things that archivists do throughout as well, if you want to hear about that. But I did do records management as well for some time after graduating, actually within the faculty itself, and then also at Victoria University, which is one of the federated universities at U of T. I helped to set up their records management program. So now I teach in the faculty. I am in the teaching stream, which means that I focus more on teaching than on research, which means I teach a lot of courses. So if you end up in the program taking archives and records management courses, then you will see me maybe a lot. So I really, really love teaching, and I love teaching in the ARM concentration. I have my professional passion for archives and records management, but I also really enjoy diving into the theory as well. So in my courses, I really try to bring together theory and practice so that we can understand how things are done now in workplaces, so also you can get a job, why they're done that way, what are the theoretical foundations underpinning that practice, but also critiques of those underpinnings and critiques of those practices so that we can also move forward in and do innovative work. I'm going to hand things over now to Olivia to just introduce herself as well.
Sure. I'm just gonna share my video. Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm a second-year student here at the iSchool, so I'm doing the combined degree program, meaning I get the Master of Information with a concentration in Archives and Records Management, as well as the Master of Museum Studies program. I completed my undergraduate degree with a major in history and a minor in art history. So if anyone has any questions about student life, just feel free to put it in the chat at any time or to say it through the mic. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Thanks, Olivia. And yeah, Olivia will speak more specifically later on about some of the student things that you can get involved in the faculty, though I know you're hearing about that in other ways too today. So as I said, ARM is really about records. So this is going to be a little bit of a lecture, but just to give you a sense really of what the program is about. So records are any recorded information that documents the activities of us, people, and organizations, right? So that it's everything in our daily lives. These very slides are records of this event, of my preparation for this event. But obviously government creates a lot of records, corporations, educational institutions. A lot of our alum end up working in universities and colleges, religious organizations, community organizations, again, ordinary people. I have my own files here, right? I have my screen capped photos all on my phone, all the information that we collect and keep. And families as well collectively keep information and records. So everyone, as we go about our ordinary business, is creating records and keeping them and accumulating them, often not even intentionally, right? You go to the grocery store, you get your receipt. You didn't go to the grocery store to get a receipt. It's a byproduct of that action. So there are records accumulating all the time. And even though we are often a little bit unaware of the accumulation of records in our lives, records also have really great power, right? When I was a student of Dean Duff's, she would always talk about this, like if you watch movies and TV, you start noticing how many plot lines pivot around the production of a record in order to prove something, or the existence of a record that troubles something because it can be evidence of something. In the news as well. I'm always bothering my husband. See, look, it's about a record, because there's always some kind of a record that is making something happen or making something difficult. They're incredibly powerful tools. So by record too, records can come in many different formats, right? So we could be talking about letters or reports, diaries, meeting minutes, large sets of case files, contracts, legal contracts, photographs, maps, films, audio recordings, right? So they can be textual, they can be audio-visual, they can be illustrations. So here I have some things taken from the U of T archives, a very, very early map of the university, a photograph of people placing a time capsule in next to Robarts in the 70s, a group called Pollution Probe. Up top is a letter from the president of the university announcing that the university is moving to standard time. Here we have a photograph of Steve Marks, actually, who teaches in the faculty as a sessional lecturer, teaches a course on digital preservation and curation. Here he's working with our forensic recovery of evidence device machine, getting electronic digital files onto our server. And even the tweets, the social media output of the University of Toronto is also a record of the U of T and its community. So in ARM, we have both, right? We have records management and we have archives. And a few of the people talking in the session before really touched on the fact that there's also other overlaps, right? So a lot of people find that KMIM, also knowledge management, information management, has that overlap with records management. So some of our students that are more interested on that side of things will maybe do a dual concentration that way. It's like Olivia that are interested in working in cultural heritage institutions may do a CDP, right? So we have archives and museums as more of the focus point. So there are a lot of overlaps, but even within the ARM concentration, you already have this dual role of records, how we keep records in their current context, and then how we keep them moving forward to remember as an organization, as a society. And if you want to work in one, you need to understand the other. And so that's why they're combined together in one program. And there are a lot of positions that actually involve doing both. So my very first position, I was both a records manager and an archivist, working with offices to help them manage the records properly, helping them to understand what records needed to come to the archives, and then actually doing that archival work with those records. So in the program, there are particular courses that are specifically geared towards the records management side of things. So that's making sure that people have good record keeping practices within their organizations, whether that's so that the organization can support their business functions so they can actually operate, right? They can demonstrate that they own a building or that they pay their taxes, or just to do what they actually are supposed to do, like the faculty is supposed to register students, right? So they produce records and need to keep good records in order to do that. But also organizations need to comply with legislation around record keeping, but also around things like occupational health and safety, right? So they have to keep records in a certain way in order to comply with that legislation. And then also to serve as evidence of the transactions and activities, so to defend themselves legally if needed in court, and to defend themselves financially. And then we hope that they have good record keeping practices as well, so we can hold them to account, right? And in government, we use freedom of information legislation in order to ask or demand governments to release records to us so that we can see what they have done, so that the records can be evidence of decisions and actions so that government can be held to account. So this idea that we have access to government records is key to a functioning democracy. So key concerns in our program would be around what constitutes a record. What's a record? We had Professor Furness talking about the difference between knowledge and information. We talk about what's just a document or just information and what is actually an official record. Where should records be kept? How should they be kept? How long do we keep them? Legislatively, right? How long do we need to keep them? But also within the organization, how long do they need them? Are there other stakeholders, accountability reasons to keep records for a particular period of time? And then after that period, are those records going to be destroyed or transferred to an archive? When it comes to government, the typical number is around 2 to 5% of government records are going to end up in an archive. So the federal government, I would say even 1 to 3% ends up in Library and Archives Canada to be preserved permanently, and the rest, 95+%, is destroyed. So who's going to decide that? How are they going to decide that? The kinds of things we talk about. And then generally, right, how the principles and practices that have been developed for the paper world either are going to be translated to the digital world, or what can't be translated and where do we need to innovate. And the digital age is really pushing forward and disrupting a lot of traditional methods. So kinds of things you'll be talking about would be organizational cultures. So how, right, this is not just about records, it's about people, how people work with records, how they manage records within an organization, what's the information culture in an organization, what are their practices around information, you know, where can you make change and where won't you be able to make change. The legislation piece is obviously really large. I think I've already articulated why that is. Questions around access and giving public access to records, but also who within the organization can access information and records. The flip side of that is privacy, and how are we ensuring that we're protecting the privacy of individuals documented in records. Security then questions as well, and then the systems requirements that we need. So we build systems, and this is the overlap with KMIM and even ISD. We build systems for information. Can they actually do what we need them to do? So if we've decided that some records are destroyed after 7 years and some are destroyed after 10, can we easily pull out those 7-year records to destroy them without corrupting the 10-year records, right? So making sure that records management and archival requirements are built into systems is key as well. On the archival side of things, we talk about the whole workflow that an archivist does. So this is the traditional kind of archival workflow. The first is appraisal. That's the question of what comes into the archive, what gets kept, what doesn't get kept. How do we go about making that decision of this whole body of everything that we produce? What is going to join the archive and what isn't? Whose records, who matters? Then there's the very active acquisition, whether that's legally transferring records into the archives or transferring them within your organization. Then the act of arranging and describing the records. So this would be the counterpart in libraries to classifying and then cataloging. I would argue that in archives this is a little bit more complex because you know, you can think about you have 200 banker's boxes that kind of paper records. You're not going to list and describe every single piece of paper. Instead, you have to organize it and describe it in a way that makes it knowable and findable and keeps records in the context that they need to be kept in. But we don't have the time to describe every single letter, say, in a series of correspondence or in someone's email account, right? And then we do talk about preservation. So what's the kind of preventative things that we can do to ensure that both analog and digital material is preserved over the long term. We do talk a little bit about conservation techniques as well. And then the other end, right, is we've done all this stuff to acquire, to arrange, to describe, to preserve material, but how are we going to ensure that it's actually accessed? As one of my former colleagues always said, what is the point of us doing all this work if nobody's coming to look at it? So what are the methods that we can use in order to bring people to archives and bring archives to people, to ensure that people can access records, to ensure that we restrict records only when we absolutely need to, and how we advocate for archives as a sector so that they have the funding and the support that they need to do all of the work that they need to do. And as I said, my approach is talking about what we do, how we do it, why we do it certain ways, but also in rethinking some of the traditional ways that we do things. I think you'll find that throughout the program. So in archives, the kinds of concepts that we're talking about, we talk a lot about evidence and memory. Records serve both purposes. We talk about how records are used for accountability purposes, for justice and social justice quite a lot. We talk about the importance of maintaining the authenticity of records so that they can be evidence, how we ensure that they're reliable records of what they say they're a record of, and ensure they have integrity, that they haven't been corrupted. And all of this has to do also with trust, that people trust archives, they trust archivists, and trust records, that they are what they purport to be. We talk a lot about the construction of a historical record. Archivists have a lot of power to determine what's included and not included, what gets talked about in history books and what doesn't get talked about, what makes its way into documentaries and what doesn't, because if we don't keep it, it can't be studied. So along with that is also issues of representation, including the ways that we represent the material that we hold through our arrangement descriptive practices, through exhibits and outreach. We more and more are turning to doing better community building and building partnerships with people. Sometimes that means also not acquiring their records, but supporting communities in managing their own records and keeping things to home. And then again, working across media and formats, and especially all the ways that we need to adjust some of our principles and practices and assumptions, because now most records are created digitally. So in terms of careers, and again, reminder, feel free to interrupt me. That's totally fine with me. In terms of careers, this is a list of careers just from our Ask an Alum program. So it's a program in the faculty where you can connect with particular alumni who have volunteered for the program, who are happy to talk to people about their careers, who sometimes come and guest lecture in the faculty or run workshops. So I've just grabbed the titles, even of just the people that have elected to be a part of that program that have come from ARM. So we have the executive director of the archives with a Q, which is a community archives. It was formerly the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives, the CLGA. Media archivist at the University of Toronto Libraries, working with film and audio material, media collections. The archivist and records manager at the Royal Ontario Museum. Doing records management and archives work at and my French is not very great, the Conseil Scolaire Catholique Mon Avenir. I don't know why I have such a hard time with that one. The media librarian at CBC, an archivist at Seneca, the manager of records and information management at Ontario Health. We've quite a lot of alum working in Ontario Public Service in a wide variety of areas. Some of our alum actually recently worked on the COVID app as well for Ontario Digital Services. The records coordinator in the town of Aurora, working in information governance for a law firm. A few of our alum are working in law. An information management analyst at U of T, working in the IT division that serves all of U of T. The records and information analyst at the City of Oshawa. And then, of course, we have many people that go on from this degree to continue to pursue academic work, to do doctoral work, and take on academic positions. He's not on here, but I should also name someone that is a graduate of the program who also teaches in the faculty. One of the records management courses is the university archivist at U of T as well. So one of the things I talked a little bit about how, in our current climate, we're being called upon to really reckon with problematic history, with racist history, with colonial history, and archives have a huge role to play in this as well. And in part because archives have played a role in that problematic history. A lot of archives are built to serve settler colonial purposes. And so our faculty is committed to several actions in response to the calls to action of the TRC. As well, the archival community has made some commitments in response to that call. And they've just issued a new document called the Reconciliation Framework for Canadian Archives in response to Call to Action 70. So that's something that is integrated into our courses as well, talking about Indigenous sovereignty, talking about the role of records and record keeping in residential schools and the role that they played in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and then what the calls to action actually mean for archival work and how we need to, again, think about what it is that we're doing, rethink, unlearn, and learn new ways. So unless there are any questions, I'm going to continue on with my monologue here and go through the courses that you would be taking if you chose the ARM concentration. But I'm going to take a sip of water first. Okay, so these are the required courses. The first is Information Systems, Services, and Design. Professor Furness mentioned that when he was talking about the ISD concentration. So that is, the KMIM concentration. That's a course that has overlap with that concentration, and he's been teaching that course for quite a while. Then we have what we consider kind of the entry into archives, INF 1330, which is Archives, Concepts, and Issues. This course is the prerequisite for all the other archives courses to come. So if you want to take any archives courses, you need, even if you're not in the ARM concentration, you need to take this course first. It's where you're introduced to the history of theory and methods in archives, as well as some more innovative theory and methods. And you get in each week kind of a little bit of a taste of the courses to come. So there's a week where we talk about arrangement description, a week where we talk about appraisal. And that course currently is organized in a lecture plus tutorials. It's quite a large group. So there's a 2.5 hour lecture part, and then I have the pleasure of teaching 1 hour tutorials with smaller groups of around 25 students, where we really talk through the articles, discuss the article, the readings for that week, but also do some hands-on activities where we start to apply theory to practice and see what archivists do, see the kinds of products they produce, and think through some kind of scenarios and situations. Then this would be the kind of first level records management course in many ways, managing organizational records, where you look at how organizations manage information in a good way. Record keeping, Friela Foscaridi teaches that course. You met her, she's the MI director, as well as Thijs Klampenhauer, who is the university archivist at U of T and used to be in charge of records management at U of T, also teaches that course. Then we have appraisal for records retention and archives acquisition. This course is both about records management and archives, a little bit more heavy on the archive side of things, but we look at how to determine the value of records in different contexts to decide, again, what becomes a part of the archive or how long things need to be kept within organizations, how we go about making those decisions. I've been teaching that course for the last couple of years. Then we either take arrangement and description, archival arrangement and description, metadata. And you can decide to take both, in which case one of them would be an elective and then the other would be the requirement. And the reason it's a choice is if you're more interested in records management, then the latter would be the one that you take, metadata. If you're more interested in working as an archivist, then you really need to take arrangement and description so that you know how to do that work, because people hiring archivists expect that they have a really strong foundation in the standards that are used across Canada and internationally to arrange and describe archival material. I'm teaching that course this year, but historically it's been taught by Heather McNeil. Then everybody takes these two quarter courses. So these courses, let me get another color. These courses up here are semester long. So you're either taking the fall semester or the winter semester. They're half a credit. These are 6 weeks long. And maybe somebody else has already explained the information workshops to you. But you take 2 6-week long courses, which then takes you to the full 12 weeks of a semester. And this is a chance to kind of dive in, sometimes into something specific that you're interested in, but it's also a much more interdisciplinary environment. The information workshops are designed for people across concentrations. So it's a chance to meet others in other concentrations. It's a chance to build a skill in an area that you're interested in. It's a chance to learn along with a faculty member, maybe an emergent research area for them, where they're not ready to teach a full course in that, but they're starting out by teaching 6 weeks in something. So I have, I think, some examples of this year's information workshops. They change from year to year. Some stick around, some change. But just to give you a sense, I think it is Colin Furness who's teaching pandemics and information. He's an epidemiologist as well. You may have seen him on CBC these days. He's on there a lot. So this is a very obviously topical information workshop. There is one on Truth and Reconciliation Commission as it relates to museums and archives, knowledge organization, equity, and justice. So you can see how no matter what concentration you're in, that course would be of interest. Social media data analytics, which would be a great course even in ARM. I used to do social media for the U of T archives and relied on analytics to assess our impact. research data curation, et cetera, et cetera. You can see there's quite a wide variety of topics, and it's just a chance to kind of play with new ideas, think about how they relate to your concentration, learn a new skill. Sometimes there's one on bookmaking, and the students exhibit the kind of artisan books that they make in the course. There's been one on designing video games, where you get to design a little video game. So they're very varied. It's just a chance to play. And then elective courses here, I have a very long list. Strongly suggested are the preservation courses, probably for obvious reasons, but there are other electives that we recommend that people kind of build with if you're interested in ARM. Project management is incredibly important. Often archives have few staff members and you're juggling many projects. You might be applying for grants and running projects. You might be starting new initiatives and building teams and running projects. So project management is a really critical skill. In talking to alum, they've highlighted the importance of this skill for them. Then there's a series of courses talking about different issues, different perspectives on archives. Not all of these are offered every year. It depends on if a faculty member's on sabbatical, if they have an administrative load and so they're teaching fewer courses, but these are the courses on the books. Diplomatics and genre theory, so understanding, what is correspondence as a genre, what can correspondence reveal or do, what's the history of letter writing, how to understand the structure and context of a record is what diplomatics is about. That's usually taught by Professor Foscarini. I'm talking with my hands so much that my Fitbit thinks I just hit my goal, but I did not. And then again, conservation and preservation. Digital Archives Workflows is a new course that we've just developed. It's for students that have taken all the required ARM courses, and it's a chance to work hands-on with digital tools and take a set of digital records and move them through that workflow. How would you arrange and describe it? How would you provide access to it? How does this relate to the theory and methods discussed in those core courses? Specialized archives looks different in different years depending on who's teaching it. This year it's being taught by one of our postdoctoral fellows who just graduated with her PhD from the program, Jessica Lapp, and she's teaching it on community archives specifically because that's her area of expertise. Legal Issues in Archives is a highly recommended course because you learn the inner workings of the legal issues in archives, which includes things like privacy, copyright, how to transfer ownership properly of records from a private individual to an archives. It's a very practical kind of hands-on course, and it introduces you to those key legislative pieces that you need to know. The practicum is very recommended whether you're doing the co-op option or not. The practicum is a chance to get work experience. I believe it's 140 hours doing a practicum placement, working hands-on, especially if you don't have part-time work in the field as a student. It's a really great opportunity to put the theory into practice, and it means when you're sitting back in class, the things that are being talked about in class make a lot more sense because you have something to hang them on. You have that experience. There's the history of records and record keeping. I developed a new course on personal record keeping, so how individuals in our own lives keep records, and then when we donate them to archives, so how do archivists work with authors' papers, politicians' papers, activists' papers, how does that material sit in archives? Because a lot of archival theory was developed to support government records, so what's different about personal records, and do we need to develop new theories and methods, or again, how do we adapt them? Where am I? Access, advocacy, and outreach. I've been teaching recently, and I think I've already talked quite a lot about what that course is about. There is on the book still Managing Organizational Records 2, which is looking specifically at digital environments. A course on trusting records is usually taught by Heather McNeil, who's an expert in concepts of authenticity in records. For those of you interested in working with film or audiovisual material, Managing Audiovisual Materials, terrific course. And then there's the museums course that many of our students take on the photographic record if you're interested in working in photo archives, which is what I wanted to do when I was a student. I won't go through these, but on the website you can find a whole list of other complementary elective courses that you might want to take. So as I mentioned in my 5-minute speech, right, outside of ARM, you might be taking some library courses. Even if you don't choose a concentration, a dual concentration in ARM and LIS, you can still take library and information science courses. If you want to learn how to catalog, for example, you can take that course because you might want to work in a special collections that does have rare books in it, or you want to take rare book librarianship. So these are other courses that, you know, really work well within ARM, but you're always free to take courses in other concentrations as you see fit for your electives. So in terms of other routes, this has all kind of been touched on already, right? You also have the option to do a co-op during your time, so spending a term, getting work experience. As I said, there's the practicum course. Again, highly recommended. Work integrated learning really enriches what the learning that you're doing in class. More and more, I think, too, a lot of professors are designing assignments where, you know, you do get to go to archives and work with material as part of the assignment. Or this year for Access, Advocacy, and Outreach, some of my students did work for archives to create social media posts for them, to enter descriptions into Wikipedia, and do Wikidata work. One group got to redesign an archives reading room because the archives is thinking about reorienting how they're set up. So we do also in our courses try to find ways to connect to practice and practitioners, but the co-op course, the co-op option and the practicum course are where you can really get that hands-on experience. Again, the combined degree program is there, and Olivia can talk more about that if people want to hear about that. That's where you are taking the degree for 3 years, and then you come out with both museum studies and information. And then those collaborative specializations that have been touched on. And for those of you interested more in going on to do academic work, or if there's just really something you want to spend more time diving into, there is the option to write a thesis. Normally our students, that's not part of the degree requirements to write a dissertation or a thesis because it's a professional program. Okay, finally I can stop talking and you can stop having to listen to me, and I am going to hand things over to Olivia to say a few things. I do have this slide, but Olivia, you don't have to speak to this slide. You can say whatever you wanted to say about the student experience or student life and the faculty.
Just going to put some resources in the chat that I found as well, and some of them might be repeated in the slide, but that's okay. So I'm just going to talk about some student experience, extracurriculars, my experience at the iSchool, and I wanted to start by highlighting some professional associations that students can get involved with. There's the Master of Information Student Council, which is an elected group of volunteers that work to improve student life. They organize events and professional development opportunities. So you can participate either in the council or just by attending these opportunities, and I think it's just a great way for students to get involved. There's also the Association of Canadian Archivists, which has a University of Toronto student chapter where students in the ARM concentration are encouraged to participate in chapter activities and liaise with the parent organization. I think you don't have to be a member of the ACA, but I remember I signed up in my first year, and it's nice because you get a newsletter from them, you can attend workshops, they have different opportunities to ask for blog posts and whatnot, so it's just a great way to get involved. There's also a student chapter for the Association of Moving Image Archivists as well. And finally, there's a Faculty of Information peer-run blog called Living the iLife that has some really great articles written by students about all kinds of topics that are relevant to students like me, and I always enjoy reading them. And in terms of course assignments, there are traditional essays, of course, but I found that there's a lot of other opportunities to apply course concepts. As Karen was talking about, I've had the opportunity to go to an archive and research the material there and talk about and write a paper about that. I've also, in my arrangement and description class, we had the opportunity to sort of arrange and describe our own personal records. And that was just such a great way to apply course concepts in a new way. And I found that I really retained that information differently, and I enjoyed that. Also, with all the required courses that you have to take, I took all of mine in my first year. I found that it was really great to get a foundation of the field without any prior knowledge required, and I think that makes it accessible for students coming from any educational background. There's also iSkills workshops, which are a series of free professional, academic, and technical workshops that current students can sign up for in the fall and winter semesters. I have attended quite a few myself. Before the pandemic, I attended a 3D printing workshop, which was really fun. But online, I attended a resume building workshop. There's workshops about LinkedIn, coding, job search strategies, which I took one with Karen very recently, which was really interesting. And they're always just a good introduction to new topics, and they always provide resources for more learning, and I always enjoy them. Karen talked a bit about this, but there is the Ask an Alum program, which is available for current and prospective students, and you basically connect with an alumni of the program to learn about their career development and experience, and I think that's just a great resource for anyone. And if you decide to enroll here, the student services team are really helpful and responsive. I've always had my questions answered, and I think having that direct line of contact has been just really supportive and helpful. The Faculty of Information is located in the Bissell building at the St. George campus. So pre-pandemic, I found it really convenient that Robarts Library is on site because I could gather material for assignments in between classes. But the online offerings at the University of Toronto libraries are also really comprehensive. I did not have to pay for a textbook so far in this program. All of my professors have picked articles that are available online through the library website, which is really awesome. The professors of the faculty are really approachable. I've had no trouble emailing them or attending office hours, either virtually or in person. When the pandemic happened in March, I found there was a really quick adjustment to the online teaching format, even though it was a really crazy time for everybody. I found that was really helpful because I felt that I was being supported and I was able to finish my year properly. And finally, my fellow students in my program, they all come from such diverse educational backgrounds. When I speak to them, some of them are more science-based, some people have come from more arts-based backgrounds, some people have been in the workforce for many years and are returning to school, and I find that always gives such a unique lens to our conversations, and I always come out of it learning something new. And yeah, I'd say that about covers my overview of student life. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if there's questions about more academic-based things, just drop them in the chat or on the mic, and I'm happy to help answer.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And that's kind of all that I had in terms of preparation. So similarly, if you have questions for either of us, we're really happy to talk more. We have quite a lot of time left, so we can use this to chat. You can just even introduce yourself. We can get to know one another, or if you do have any specific questions or even just general questions about the program or about the field, we're happy to talk about that. I have the whiteboard here in case you would rather ask a question anonymously, but you can feel free to just unmute and introduce yourself and ask a question, or again, put a question in the chat. This is when I feel like I'm working on a radio call-in show. Is anyone out there?
Hi, I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Ursula.
Hi, my name is Ursula Carmichael, and I'm interested in the Archives and Records Management concentration for the Master of Information at the iSchool. And I guess I was wondering, because I'm really interested in this concentration, I know there's an option to complete the a concentration and a co-op, and I think you went through this also in your presentation. I'm wondering what what, I don't know, you don't have to give a percentage or anything, but is this something that's very commonly done by students who are in the archives and record management pathway? And is this something that you see happening a lot successfully? Because I know that sometimes there can be issues with availability of co-op placements.
Yeah. So I am not involved in running co-op in any way, so anything that I say is limited by my limited knowledge. I don't have stats on the take-up of co-op. Olivia might know actually even better from her colleagues, but I do know that there are a lot of ARMS students that do co-ops. We often have a student going to UNESCO in Paris to do a co-op position. We have over the years, right, built connections in the field. We have people that have, a repeat position, co-op position every year. And the faculty members themselves have connections. So I don't know if you're interested in more the archive side of things or the records management side, but in the archive side of things, the archival world's very, very small. So we reach out to people and make things happen. And so, I mean, this is the case for my current students, like they should know too, like you can always reach out to faculty members to try to get placements too that you want to end up in. When I was a student, even for the practicum course, I wanted to be a photo archivist. I reached out to the photo archivist at the City of Toronto Archives and I set up my own placement. So being proactive that way can help as well. But to me, it's highly recommended, especially if you don't have as much work experience. It's a really great chance. This year, I actually hired some co-op students myself in the summer because of the pandemic. Some positions were not available. People could go to Paris, for example. Yeah.
For sure.
And so within the faculty, we kind of stepped up to take on some students as well. So I had 2 students working with me to build a digital archives lab. So we collected archival material and made like a SharePoint site where we organized it that I can use in my teaching. So sometimes it's not always exactly where you want to be, but I think you can always get a learning opportunity out of it. But I do recommend that you get in touch with the work integrated learning folks as well if you have like more specific questions. So Colin Furness, who spoke today, is very involved in co-op, and as well our senior careers officer, Chioma Ekpo, can also help to answer like more specific questions around that program.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and thank you also for your presentation.
Yeah, no problem. Olivia, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I mean, thank you for posting in that link.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with co-op. I know for the CDP program, we're not able to do the co-op option. It's like we do the exhibition project for museum studies. But I know some people who are doing it and they've been enjoying it. But yeah, I just put some information for further research for you, Ursula.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And I know one of the students that worked for me this summer, she's doing a second co-op this year because she enjoyed it so much. Not for me, but she's doing another co-op. So yeah, I think it really does work well for some students.
Oh, great. That's good. That's
often
good
it leads to a job. Yeah, very often it can lead to a position after, right? This is a way that organizations see who's out there, see what kind of work they do, and that's always my advice to students that are thinking about, getting a job post-graduation, is you need to get yourself in front of people and do work in front of them so that they can see your work, right?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Then when you apply for a position, they already know all of that. So. Are there any other questions? Are you sure? Even something general, doesn't have to be specific, nitty-gritty program stuff, but anything generally about the profession. If you're thinking, is this something I want to do? Okay, well, it seems like we don't have any more questions. So unless someone's typing, in which case keep typing, but otherwise we will maybe close up. And I'll just wish you a good rest of your weekend. And I do hope to see you next year, whether I'm seeing you this way, but I hope to actually see you in 3D next year. I will hang out until the room is empty. If anyone wants to hang out and ask questions, feel free to do so. Thanks, Ursula. And yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to email me anytime too. All of our files are on the Help Hub. I should have said this on the iSchool website. Any of the liaisons, the careers officer, like all of these different people, there's a nice directory of all of our emails.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care.
You too.